Alright, YouTube, while people are temporarily distracted about what Trump said a decade ago involving vaginas, increasingly it appears that people are a little bit more concerned with the fact that these Podesta emails that were released by WikiLeaks contain excerpts that are internally remarked upon as being potentially damaging, which is the really funny part. From her Goldman speeches, that is her Wall Street speeches. Now, she swore up and down, oh, not going to release them. People don't need to know what's in them. It's not a problem. Don't worry. I would never betray people. It turns out all of that is actually not true. Now, if this is Assange's idea of mildly damaging material, because he claimed, he said some time ago, oh, yeah, these leaks are going to get progressively worse towards November. So each stage of release is going to be more damaging to the Clinton camp than the last. If this is what he considers to be the least damaging of the material that he's got, I can imagine it's going to be quite a doozy before November. And add that to James O'Keefe's tape that he claims he has, and he honestly probably does. And I don't think that Trump saying grab her by the pussy a decade ago really is going to matter in the public consciousness come the next leak from WikiLeaks, especially if around the same time O'Keefe is coordinating with him, hey, I'll wait a couple extra days to release my tape, or let me release this first, bump your release a couple of days, just so that people absorb both. It turns out, for example, that Hillary openly states there, within the excerpts, that it's necessary to have both a public and a private persona. That is that what a politician said. I mean, it's common knowledge, but to hear a politician actually say this is, I guess, jarring to some people. That a politician has to say one thing in public and another thing in private, or think one thing, or claim to think one thing in public, and then in private their actual thinking is totally different. So there goes any hope that people could have possibly had in her fulfilling any of her campaign promises, because quite clearly it's going to be hard to determine which promises she actually believes in a private setting. So that's probably the most damaging line from that. And within the email itself, the reason why it was excerpted here, that is, the reason why some of the content from these speeches was even in a Podesta email, was specifically people advising that they would need to be scrubbed in order for any talk to the public to be spoken of. These particular points were far too damaging for them to be publicly known. So actually, it's very funny, a Clinton ally, by trying to point out what to scrub, what not to actually release, what to hide away until after the election, because of those Clinton allies making those suggestions to try to help her with potential fallout from her Goldman speeches, we actually at least have excerpts from those Goldman speeches. It's very, very funny. It's very ironic. It's also deserving. She should have released them long ago. She should address their content. She has continuously refused to do so. And I would point something out, by the way. Some people say, oh, Republican phony scandal or something. There's nothing that damaging in them. It wasn't Trump calling on her first and foremost to release these. It was Bernie Sanders. And that's where I think the real damage from this comes. Not from, oh, Republicans don't like Hillary Clinton. Well, no shit, they don't like Hillary Clinton. It's kind of obvious that that's going to happen. But rather from the actual left within the Democratic Party. Now, there was another little excerpt from days ago. Bucket of losers comments supposedly were made regarding sort of the New Age left and some other similar groups, the New Apolitical Front within the youth. I'm not sure if that's been corroborated as true, but I did use WikiLeaks' lookup function, plugged in bucket of losers, and there were 4 emails that came up. Now, I couldn't find that exact text anywhere in the emails, but the fact that a fairly specific term would indeed come up there is making me a little bit uncomfortable, as far as the possibility that maybe there could be a person within WikiLeaks, and Assange should probably pay attention to this, with access to some of this material that's been dumping some on the side in possibly modified form. I would be slightly worried about that if I were Assange, but ultimately, the material's still going to leak, so who gives a fuck? But it's pretty damaging here. She also comes out as explicitly pro-Keystone, supposedly, or at least she's pro-Keystone when she's talking to Wall Street. She also speaks of, this is really funny, the need for Wall Street to be on board with Wall Street reforms. Now, I'm not sure that this is going to work very well trying to explain this to anyone. And the Clinton camp has already come out and said, oh, well, we're not going to confirm or deny emails that were obtained illegally. Okay, well, if they were obtained illegally, then you've just admitted, unfortunately, that they are real. Because if they were heavily modified so that they no longer resembled your actual internal emails, you wouldn't be able to claim that they were illegal to obtain now, would you? Trump could have just the same, by the way, by the same token, this would be the same as if Trump had put out a statement after his tape regarding vaginas was released yesterday and said, oh, well, in California it's illegal to record someone without their express consent, so I'm not even going to remark upon this. It was illegally obtained, so, shoot the messenger. It doesn't matter what the content is. No, he had to address it. I think Clinton's making a terrible strategic mistake by not addressing this. She should release the full text of the Goldman speeches. Because that, assuming that there's nothing damaging in there, you'd think releasing them would put people at ease. I would think clearing up that lingering issue of, well, she might have said corrupt shit would be a lot easier if no corrupt shit was said. The fact that it was probably wall-to-wall corruption is the reason why she's not releasing them. And this is something that actually matters. Unlike, this is not from 2005. This is from 2014, 2015. This is from relatively recently. This is from the last couple of years that this material is actually circulating here. A lot of these emails are marked 2014, 2015, up until, I believe, September or October of that year. So it's fairly recent. It's within certainly living memory. And Clinton doesn't want to talk about them. Well, I wonder why. It's like people were asking, well, why doesn't she want to release the Goldman speeches? Well, if you take a look at Podesta's excerpts from them, that he specifically is addressing because they're damaging and trying to warn the Clinton camp, yeah, this material needs to be scrubbed before the public gets a hold of it. Yeah, I wonder why she didn't want to release that. And there's much more, too. Go to the article. You'll get to see all sorts of stuff. Funnily enough, the mainstream media is the one primarily covering this. They're completely ignoring the FOIA'd material regarding, as I predicted, regarding Clinton coordinating with the White House on her email server, which shows that Obama's a complete liar, but doesn't really hurt the Clinton camp. Instead, they're focusing primarily on the Goldman speeches, which are a slim minority of the content. It's only a few emails out of the whole Podesta dump, but it is the most damaging, because that's been a tender issue, especially between her and Sanders. Not even so much her and the Republicans. Everyone knows, the Republicans are going to come out and whine if there's anything untoward going on, just as the Clinton camp and the Democrats at large. They're going to come out and whine because Trump hasn't released his tax returns, because Trump said something sexist 10 years ago. Okay, we already know that. But what do you think is going to sway independent voters? Those who aren't partisans, those who don't really, they don't care necessarily whether the candidates beat one another over the head. They don't feel any personal ire over it because they're not a party loyalist. I'm included within this number. I'm much more concerned about the possibility that our next president is giving speeches to a bunch of corporate heads and bankers and saying, oh yeah, fuck what I'm saying on the campaign trail, just ignore it. I'm going to do what I want. Don't worry, my private persona and my public persona aren't the same. I'm a little bit more worried about that than the idea that we'll have another JFK or LBJ or Bubba Bill in office who's going to philander. Because philandering is going to happen anyway. Clinton would probably do it too. What, you think she can't get whatever man meat or woman meat or whatever other meat she's into at a whim because she happens to be rich and powerful and have the name Clinton? Of course she can. Bubba Bill would be back in the White House. He'd be banging interns too. Of course he would. They'd probably have a three-way or something. So I'm not exactly sure why people are so worked up over that. But if you check Twitter from last night, if you looked anywhere on the web elsewhere, what you saw were a hell of a lot of people shilling for Hill. Oh, Trump's done now, essentially, sort of material. attempting to cover up the real news, which was the WikiLeaks dump. But if you check Twitter, there were a million people talking about WikiLeaks and not that many people really discussing Trump, because they were fixated on something that is far more juicy, regardless of what... And I told you that this would happen. The mainstream media is fixated on Trump. But the underground media, including the majority of the population, is currently fixating on, yeah, Hillary just admitted within the excerpt that one of her allies supplied through this email system that they got a hold of, is admitting the fact that, number one, it's damaging, and number two, shouldn't be released. And number three just goes to show that, yeah, it's kind of obvious at this point why Hillary Clinton doesn't want to release the Goldman speeches. Because it would end her political career. People would see her as a backstabbing snake who is not on board with any of the sort of leftist principles that she's describing. Really, the only thing in these emails that's corroborated as far as being a far-left so-called talking point that she's actually morally on board with is gun control, which you couldn't pick an issue on which the Democrats tend to fare more poorly than that specific issue. If more people were aware of this, her support would decline to zero at some point, because it would be clear that she's promising the moon on a stick to Sanders supporters. She's not going to give them jack shit. She's proclaiming herself at the same time to be a centrist while going after a line on guns and taxation that's far, far more virulent than anything Obama has ever expressed, certainly. So unless you're a single-issue Democratic partisan who just wants to get rid of guns for some reason and wants to pay more taxes, unless you fall into that very specific category, there's no longer a reason for you to be backing Hillary Clinton. It just doesn't exist, because she's openly proclaiming around her rich donors, yeah, what I say in public and what I say in private are two totally different things. I'm pro-Keystone. I'm pro-TPP, unrepentantly. This is her in her speeches. We've only got the excerpts covering that, but this is a Clinton ally saying these are the sections that need to be scrubbed. Why would a Clinton ally lie, in communication with the Clinton campaign about the content of speeches that they and Clinton would know full well what it was? It wouldn't make any sense. No, these are real emails. They were illegally obtained, potentially, but who cares? We have Donna Brazil ranting about malware every time Guccifer 2.0 releases something. It's trickery. It's extremely underhanded. They're trying to make people afraid. It's like when the government says, oh, Russia's the one hacking these things. Bullshit. Show me some proof or shut the fuck up. Because I don't believe you. There's no reason to. You've shown me no evidence that that's actually the case. You have a vested interest in trying to deflect from the issue for political reasons. So I'm going to assume that's what you're doing, unless you can offer me some sort of evidence that rises to such a level that I would forsake that line of reasoning. That's about all. Peace out.